If you're a Kings Island fan, the book, Kings Island, A Ride Through Time, is a must-have. Hello, everyone. Alongside Ryan Sir, I'm Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.
Tower Topics is a podcast by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans. That's who we are, and that's who we care about. Special guest today, Don. I love these episodes.
That's right. We have Evan Ponstingle. He's the author of Kings Island, A Ride Through Time. And like I said, you have to have this book if you're a Kings Island fan. I mean, 300 pages just really walks you through the whole history of Kings Island, even going back to, when the park was, conceived, the idea for it. So, Evan, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on Tower Topics. Really, really excited for tonight's episode.
Yeah, as are we. We're really excited. So, Don, obviously, for those of you who are audio listeners, held up a copy of the book. I actually own two copies. I've told you this, Evan. I pre-ordered the
Yep.
physical copy. Then I realized we're not in an age where we read physical books, so I bought another copy on my iPad, and that's the one I read. So I've technically never cracked open your book before, but I have read the whole thing. Um,
Exactly.
so, what got you interested in writing a book on Kings Island's history?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I started working at Kings Island in 2017 in merchandise. I worked at Emporium on International Street, which I was like saying is the largest merchandise location at any Cedar Fair park, which is true. But of course, being that location, being the largest location at any Cedar Fair park, you get a lot of questions. You get a lot of people coming in and asking questions. And one of the questions that I started getting from guests was, do you sell any books about the history of Kings Island? And not only did we not sell any, but nobody had ever written one. And I grew up going to Kings Island. I moved to Mason with my family in 2007. About 5 minutes away, I can see the whole park skyline from my backyard. So my family and I, we just grew up going to Kings Island all the time, going into high school, going to Kings Island all the time with my friends. And it's just one of those places where, as you walk around, I'm like, okay, you know, why is this park the way that it is, and how has it grown and developed and changed over the years? And so I had all these guests asking this question, and really this was something that I had been wanting to see for years, because like I said, I wanted to know how Kings Island came to be, and especially how it grew over the years and why it grew over the years. And so all these guests coming in and asking that question really spurred me, and I'm like, okay, this isn't just something that I want to see. This is a gap that needs to be filled, and this is a story that needs to be told, and this is something that the public of Kings Island, that our guests really want. And I'm a big believer that you should always give guests what they want. So that so I was like, okay, I'll do it. I'll write it. So I did.
Evan, your curiosity, I find that a big part of being a good storyteller is being curious, going out and
Mhm.
finding, those different stories. And, how old were you when you started putting this together? Because I think that's another, part of it to me is you got this 300-page book, and we're not talking about someone that's in their 40s or 50s and has written all these different novels, and even been a reporter or anything like that. And you look at this, just how polished it and everything it is. I mean, very impressive for your age.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, because I was 15 actually when I started writing this. So I actually started. This just popped up in my memories in my camera roll. I started on January 8th, 2019. So 5 years ago was when I started the researching process for this book, which is kind of hard to believe that it's already been 5 years. But yeah, I was 15 years old.
Yeah. So, Evan, one of the things that kind of stuck out to me with your book, I would say the biggest anecdote is that anybody who's a Kings Island fans knows that Kings Island can draw its roots back from Coney Island because they had floods and they moved it.
Mhm.
I didn't even know being. I don't want to say Mr. Kings Island because that's Nick Gaskins now, but the King of Kings Island. I didn't know the whole details of the story of Gary
Mhm.
Wachs had to go to the board and convince the board, and there's a lot of details in that story that I didn't know. So let me ask you this, especially from like the early days of Kings Island, was there any like shocking
Mhm.
story that you learned from interviewing all these people that you thought you knew the story but you actually didn't, like from the firsthand accounts that you heard?
Yeah. One of the stories that I really enjoyed from the first couple years of Kings Island was when the Brady, or sorry, not the Brady, but the family came to visit in 1972. And again, this is things where it's like, everybody knows Partridge Family came. I mean, you guys did the episode about it. They filmed their episode. I left my heart in Cincinnati. But a really, really funny story that's related to that was from Dennis Spiegel. And he was the assistant general manager of Kings Island in 1972. And he told me a great story about how he got a call one day from someone at the Taft Broadcasting corporate office, somebody that worked for one of the television stations. And he said, "Hey, my son is a big Partridge Family fan. Can you watch him? He's going to come down. I'm going to drop him off. Can you let him, meet the cast members and that sort of thing?" So Dennis Spiegel spent the whole day chasing this kid all around Kings Island and bring the kid up to meet the stars of the Partridge Family. And that kid was George Clooney. So that's just one of those stories that you would never guess, you would never about. But that's one of my favorite little anecdotes from the first couple of years.
Now, Evan, as you were putting this book together,
Mhm.
a lot of people that you spoke with about it. Walk us through the process of how you wanted to talk to, who you needed to talk to, and how you went about tracking them down.
That is a great question. There, it's not one of those things where I had like a list of people from the beginning. In the sense, it's not like I had everybody written down from the beginning. There definitely were key people that I knew I needed to interview from the beginning. Gary Watts, for instance, I knew day one I wanted to interview him. Rob Decker, another person, day one I knew that I wanted to interview. But as the research goes and as the interviewing process goes, more stones start to get unturned, and it kind of leads you down separate paths. So, for instance, I'd be interviewing somebody, and they're like, "Hey, you should really talk to so and so." Okay, here's their phone number, here's their email. Reach out to them. They'd be great for this section of the book's history. Or going through newspapers, and maybe somebody's quoted and it's like, "Oh, I haven't heard that name before," but it's like their position would be very interesting. So I'll give you an example of that. So Bill Awesome, who was the rides manager at Kings Island for a number of years, that's how I actually interviewed him. Was I was going through newspapers. He was quoted in an article about Waterworks when that opened in 1989, and that was a section that I needed some more information on. So I thought, what the heck? Here's a great person that I didn't know about before that I can reach out. And then sometimes, other people help connect me. So I know, Ryan, you helped connect me with Don, so which is awesome. Always very thankful for that. That was a fantastic interview. So that's really how it went. Was I knew that there were people that I need to reach out to, and then they kind of led me to other people, and then as I just went on, I found other people through going through the newspapers and stuff that I reached out to.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you bring up Bill Awesome. I remember him when he was in his teenage years, and he was a ride associate on the Beast and then the Racer. And
mhm.
watching him, for me, it was kind of fun back in those days to watch everybody go from seasonal to like a supervisor to a manager to full time to directors, and what he's doing today in that. So, great guy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's awesome, and we still stay in touch. And I actually just saw him in November at IAPA. So
Very cool. So Evan, honestly, like the work that you put into the book is that stands for itself. You did a very thorough job, fantastic book. But one of the more impressive things is you were just a kid and you published a book. Can you walk us through the process of getting a book published? How did you get people to take you seriously? And as a side note, what was the process like to actually get it sold in Kings Island? Were you able to leverage that because you worked in merchandise at the park?
yeah, that was part of it. I'll answer the second question first because it's a lot quicker to answer than the first question. But yeah, I mean, as far as being able to sell it in the park, I reached out to Steve Ryan, the merchandise director, and I was like, "Hey, I'm a merchandise associate, and I have this book that's coming out, and I think this would be a fantastic product to sell in the park." So my publisher sent the manuscript to him, and it took a little bit of time, but one day I was out for a walk with my family and came back inside, and I saw my phone. It said missed call from Mike
Huh.
Koontz. I thought, "Oh my gosh, am I in trouble?" I mean, oh my gosh, like what, a million thoughts race through your mind. So I called him and he's like, hey, I just want to let you know that I reviewed the book myself. And I just want to let you know that I think this is a fantastic product. We're very excited to sell it in the park. So I was like, awesome. So glad that we got that. So I was really, really excited about that, because I don't think that, I think it would have been great if the book had come out, but selling it in the park is just that extra, it's just the extra on top, especially that summer, because 2020, it came out April of 2021. And then still that year, I was still working in merchandise. So summer 2021, when people would come into Emporium, I would be able, I mentioned my book with every single transaction at the cash register.
Sounds like a
Really,
conflict
really
of interest
cool.
if I've ever heard one.
But as far I don't think so. I mean, I don't think so. But yeah, so that was really, really awesome. I'm very, very glad that part of it came through. But as far as the question about how to go about publishing a book, that is a loaded question, because that is almost a book unto itself as far as this book goes. So I started writing it without any publisher attached to it, because I'm just like, I just need to start this. It just needs to happen, and it's going to find a way. It's going to find a way, as the book happens. It's going to find a way to get published. So I started reaching out to publishers summer of 20, and by October of that year, I had a contract signed with the company for a May 2020 release date. So, which is awesome. I'm like, perfect. Contract signed, I have an actual deadline to get this finished by, super exciting. Like, this is actually going to happen. It's so awesome. So the deadline was March 1st for the finished manuscript. So I finished it, I submitted it, everything was peachy keen until COVID happened. And that kind of threw a whole wrench into it, because obviously COVID disrupted everything, all of our lives. And it also disrupted the book publishing process. So then that summer was a big question mark of, okay, when is this going to come out? Because it's obviously not going to come out in May. So I was in constant contact with my publisher at the time, and they just kept pushing it further and further back. Oh, it'll come out late spring. Oh, it'll come out summer. Oh, it'll come out late summer. Oh, it'll come out early fall. And then that turned into, you're going to have a proofread copy from us back by last week of August, and then it'll be out early September. Okay, well, that's a good step forward, because now we actually have a concrete date finally again, that for the next step. Okay, well, the last week of August came and went, didn't hear anything. So I reached out to them on September 1st, and I'm like, hey, just wanted to check in, see if there's any progress. And basically they were just like, the books that we have out right now are not selling that well. We are, basically tabling everything, and basically they voided my contract, which was very disheartening in the moment. I kind of felt like the rug had been pulled out from under me, because it's like, you have everything locked in, you have a contract, like, just when you think you have everything settled, you suddenly have nothing settled at all. So you're back to square one. So then it's like, again, back to square one. So I had to find someone else. And I got very, very lucky with this, because right as that happened, I got a book that had just come out in the mail called Imagineering an American Dreamscape. And that book is about the history of regional theme parks in America. So how they all got started. So Six Flags Over Texas, Marriott's Great America, and of course, Kings Island. So that book was written by Barry Hill. So I reached out to him. I read the book. I thought it was absolutely excellent. And like I said, this happened right as the first publisher pulled out. So I reached out to him. I'm like, hey, doing this thing with Kings Island, very similar subject matters, yep, there it is. Yep. It's a fantastic book. I hope everybody listening buys it. It's just a wonderful, wonderful book. So I reached out to Barry. I said, you have this great book that just came out. How did you get published? And he said, well, you're very lucky, because I actually have the resources to publish books myself. So send me your manuscript and I'll let you know what I think. And within just a couple of weeks, I was signing a contract with Barry. And that ended up being the best thing that ever happened in this book. Like I said, in the moment, it was just so awful, being without a publisher. But the first publisher pulling out of the contract ended up being the best thing to happen to this book, because there was still a lot more that I wanted to do with this book that I just wasn't able to do with the timeline. So Barry gave me an extra 3 months to basically do whatever I wanted with this book. So I ended up interviewing a bunch of more people, a lot of people that I wanted to interview the first time. I just wasn't able to because of the deadline. So I was able to interview a bunch more people. I was able to, this is actually a funny story. So I'm like, I just want to make sure, before I submit the final manuscript, I want to have at least one other person read through it. So I actually had my mom read through it and proofread it. But because of the deadline, she only read the first half of the book the first time around. So I'm like, all right, good news. Now you can finish reading the whole thing. So that was funny. And then obviously I got my cover designer on board to do the cover design using that extra time. I was able to get connected with Paul Bonifield, who's just fantastic. He's the best. So I was really, really lucky with that. So yeah, so the best thing that ever happened to this book, interestingly enough, was the first publisher pulling out and getting acquainted with Barry Hill. I give so much credit to Barry because he understood my vision completely for this book, and he understood what this book needed to be. So I can't thank him enough for taking this chance on me. And yeah, he's just the best.
Yep.
So I'm proud of how it came out.
Friend of the show,
if I
Barry
was
Hill.
going to write a book, if I was going to write a book, the first person I'm reaching out to is Barry Hill and just asking him, all right, what do I need to do? How do I do this? So
oh, absolutely.
yeah, just a great
he's an
guy.
expert.
Yeah, and you
He's the
talk
best,
about Paul
yeah.
Bonifield. I mean, the cover design, everything else. I mean, you had some really good people to work with on this.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I got so lucky. Just so blessed with how everything just came together so perfectly. It's like, not even in your imagination could all the pieces fall into place in such perfect harmony. So yeah, it was just I'm just really, really lucky, really, really blessed to meet the people that I've met because of this book and to be involved with that. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Paul, I always joke that Paul is Cedar Fair's professional troll. He's a for those who don't know, he's a graphic designer and in the creative team. But I
Mhm.
run into Paul at more places around the country than anybody else. Like most recently, I happened to be at Epcot the same day as him. So we met up and chatted for a few minutes, took a selfie, and that was it. But I've seen him at
Oh,
Cedar.
that's
Yeah.
hilarious. Yeah, he's always somewhere. He's always traveling.
Yeah,
Yeah, just
always.
tremendously talented.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, okay? You get the book, it's published, uh, and you get your copies, you see it in the emporium there at Kings Island, your name on the cover. How cool was that?
It's just unreal. It's you've spent so long looking at this on a Google Doc. I wrote the whole thing on Google Docs. So on my school issued Chromebook. So you spend 2 years every single day for 2 years, looking at this on, like I said, on a Google Doc on a Chromebook, and to see it in person and to hold it in your hands and be like, this is my writing. This is my work in this tangible format. It's just surreal. It was just the first time that I opened the box and I pulled the book out, it was just one of the most amazing moments of my life. And again, like I said, all the twists and turns to get there with the publishers and the contracts and everything, and to finally be like, it all came together. It all worked out perfectly. I mean, it really worked out perfectly. But funny story about that. I was at Dollywood with my family when Barry sent the first copy of me, and he sent it to me. I got a notification that it was delivered at my house. Well, again, I'm at Dollywood, and I was in Gallenberg, and I get an email from Barry like 2 days later. He just writes, "Well, dot dot dot." I'm like, I'm on vacation right now, but I can't wait to see it when I get back. So I had a surprise waiting for me when I got back. So it was awesome.
Yeah.
Great
There's
feeling.
nothing worse than being on vacation and there being something you're excited about at home because you can't like live
Yeah.
in the moment, you
Yeah.
know?
Exactly. It's like you're loving, Dollywood and Gallenberg, and it's so much fun, but then it's like, you have something even cooler waiting for you when you get back.
Yeah.
So
Well, Evan, the way that I met you, for those who don't know, you were working the Emporium. You came up to me and you knew who I was because I guess my reputation precedes me at Kings Island is the term we're using. Um, and I always
so
was really rooting for you, especially because you were so young. Because I see it this way. I mean, there's going to be a day when your book's out of print. There's going to be a day when nobody knows about this book. But as young as you are, you've written and published a book. Very few people can really say that. And that's something that nobody can take away from you. So I mean, I've
mhm.
told you this before, but it's a huge feat. I'll never write a book. And if I do, it'll be fiction.
Hey, never say never. You never know. I
I
mean,
mean, but Evan too. I mean, the thing about it is, I mean, there are so many books out there about different amusement parks and just all these different just parts of the industry. But your book doesn't take a backseat to any of them.
Mm-mm. Yeah, I
thank
couldn't
you.
recommend it more. But before we go any further, Evan, why don't you tell our listeners where to find your book? We mentioned it's at Kings Island. Kings Island's closed right now as of this recording. Where else can you get it?
Yeah, absolutely. You can get it from Amazon, of course. I mean, what can you get on Amazon? You can also get it from my publisher's website as well. It's rivershorepress.com is where you're going to want to go. And you're not only going to be able to pick up my book on Rivershore Press, you're also going to be able to pick up Imagineering an American Dreamscape. You're going to be able to pick up the brand new book that Rick Bastrop just came out with, Adventures of a Theme Park Designer. For you Kings Island fans, he was the designer of Phantom Theater and Adventure Express. So that is absolutely a fantastic book. And then also the accompaniment to my book, Kings Island: A Photographic Journey, which Barry did with another KI Central user, John Keeter, who's fantastic. So that's another great little piece that you can pick up. Well, it's actually not little; it's a coffee table book. But yeah, rivershorepress.com, great place to not only pick up my book, but also pick up all the other stuff that I've been working on. You can also get it at pretty much. Oh, sorry.
No, I was gonna say I literally own every single book you just mentioned, but I couldn't grab them fast enough.
Perfect.
We've had Barry Hill on the show. We've had Rick Bastrop on the show to promote his book.
Yep.
We've had John
Yep.
Keeter on the show. All these are fantastic. All River Shore Creative. So fantastic resource. Sorry, go ahead with your thought, Evan.
Yep. Oh yeah, and I was just gonna say you can also pick it up at pretty much any bookstore. I know at least in the Cincinnati area carries it. Barnes and Nobles. It's funny, the Barnes and Nobles in Mason, I always go in and it's right there when you walk in the door.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, which is fun. So yeah, Joseph Beth Bookstore as well carries it. So pretty much any bookstore sells it, which is cool.
Not Borders though.
So I wish. I love Borders. I was there all the time. I cried when it closed. That was like my favorite place.
You ever go to? Do you remember Walden Books, Evan? Or is that before your time?
No, I think that's a little bit before my
That was a
time.
bookstore in a mall. It literally carried like 150 books. It was stupid.
Yeah,
Wow.
Evan, we have a couple of listener questions here to kind of wrap
Okay.
up this episode. It's
Awesome.
from Wildcat Coasters,
Okay.
and her
Yep.
questions are for you. Number one, how old were you when you first visited Kings Island?
I was 4 years old, and that was April 2007.
All right. And the second question, I thought this was a good question. Which number is greater? The amount of roller coaster track at Kings Island or the number of hours of research done for the book?
I would have to say it's the amount of research done for this book. I mean, like I said, I spent every single day for 2 years, a little bit over 2 years. So started in January of 2019, and then it was published in April of 2021.
Yeah, well, it was, like I said, very well done. Highly recommended if you're a fan of Kings Island, or really just the amusement attractions industry. I mean, just a fascinating book, and it really walks you through from the time Kings Island was first thought of, all the way through the 2022 season, their 50th anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
I still can't get over the fact that Don and I recently recorded an episode about Firehawk and had vivid memories of it opening in the spring of 2007, and you just mentioned, oh, my first visit was when I was 4 in April of 2007.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't. Yeah.
Well, of course.
Evan, did you ever look back at the book and the different stories and some of the rides and attractions that were there and just wish you'd have been able to, turn back time and experience it?
Oh, absolutely. There are so many rides that I wish I could have ridden, and time periods that would have been so interesting and so cool to experience. I'd say the number one ride that I wish I could have ridden, of course, is Phantom Theater. My number one ride of all time is the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland. And so to have my own Haunted Mansion in my backyard, I mean, how cool is that? But just such a creative ride with all the characters and the music and the effects. So I really, really wish that I could go back in time and ride that. And Rick Bastrop, of course, who we mentioned, has been on your guys' show and has just wrote the book. And he's become a very good friend of mine. And I'm just like, oh, what I wouldn't give to bring that ride back. But it's nice that they were at least able to do the show. That was fantastic. Fan Theater Encore. It's a very, 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 very great show, and it's just great to see those characters back in the park. So
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. Phantom Theater was something beyond Kings Island that they did. It was really them beyond themselves. So I completely understand. And I think we get the listener question about once a month of if you could bring back Phantom Theater, would you? And the answer is a resounding
yes,
yes, but I would want it back correctly. I wouldn't want screens, I wouldn't want cutouts, I wouldn't want
yes,
stuff printed on Centra or anything like that. If they can make it with
yep,
practical animatronic figures, 100 you can not add anything for the next 3 years after that, and I would totally be cool with it.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'm 100% with you. It's funny you mentioned screens. I was at Knott's Berry Farm in March of 22, and I rode Knott's Berry Tales, Return to the Fair. And, it's great to have, that was kind of their Phantom Theater as far as, the original story and kind of the fans that have, embraced it as far as a core part of the park's identity. And so I rode Knott's Berry Tales, Return to the Fair, and it's great to have the characters back at Knott's and have the music back at Knott's and that art style. But shooting at a video screen does not work for that ride. You need the physical sets,
Mm,
you need the animatronics, you need to have all those pieces come together, or else you get off and it's like, okay, that was nice. If I want to, I say if I want to shoot at things on a video screen, yeah, I can go to Dave and
right.
Buster's. I don't need to go to farm. I'm the same way. Phantom Theater, I would love to see come back, but no guns, no shooting, and no screens.
Yeah.
No screens ever, 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 ever. No
And
screens.
no
And yeah,
Centra
no guns, no
cutouts
shooting.
either. Absolutely. Cool.
Yeah, no, yeah, we're no blue blasters, no
Right.
cutouts.
Well, anyway, so Evan's book currently out. He mentioned a bunch of places where you can get it. It's Kings Island: A Ride Through Time. We're going to put a link in the description as to where to find it. But Evan, thank you so much for being on the show. This was a long time coming. Thank you for all the hard work you put into that book. Just absolutely incredible. If you guys don't have the book, but you listen to this podcast, I don't know what's wrong with you. So like our audiences should be intermingled entirely, but maybe there are some stragglers that fell through. Even if you're not a book person, I hate books. I'd rather
Yeah,
watch it on VHS than read a book, but I read your book and it was awesome. Cool. All right.
thank you. That means
Oh, absolutely, Evan. But hey, I'm Ryan Sir along with Don Helbig with author Evan Ponstingle, and this is Tower Topics.